Afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you, Alicia, for the introduction, and thanks to ATD, ISA, and BITAS for the opportunity to share my thoughts and my experience on this particular topic. One of the, when I got this topic and I was looking at it and I said, hey, what do we actually mean by articulating the real value of enterprise architecture, right? So I had to dig back in my previous experience. And by the way, I've been in IT for 30 over years, recently transformed to become more like a consultant and trainer. But previously, I think like some of the previous panel speakers, we have always been involved when you're senior enough with solution architecting, right? So moving from solution architect to become enterprise architect anyway. So, and, thinking about this particular topic, I take back my experience and I was looking at how would I have done it differently, right? How would you actually be able to convey, not just about enterprise architecture, but even just about IT in general, right? You have a solution you want to bring in. How would you have done it, right? Most of the times when we as IT side, or even sometimes at EA now, we will probably get a response like, you're too technical. Can you speak in layman's term, right? So had a look at that, and I find that it's not about, there are two words to this title. One is about articulating, which means presenting, and that is the later part. The critical part to this entire topic is actually, what is the real value of enterprise architect to the organization, to the stakeholder you're presenting to, right? Enterprise architect will bring in a lot of values, some of which we'll go through afterwards, but you need to be able to match those values to what the organization is expecting from us, and later on to be able to present it in such a way that it addresses the stakeholders you are trying to convince that you need to expand the team. Your team is doing well. No? Mind you, most of the time, whatever we're doing, the meaningful things will take a longer time to deliver, right? So we don't have shortcuts to many of those things. Right. So after thinking about it, what I'm going to share with you today is not so much what real values are there in enterprise architecture, because every different organization will be different, but what you need to know and what you need to understand, what your capabilities that you can deliver, the benefits that you can bring to the table when you are in discussion with users, with management, digital team, and all that. In many organizations, the most scary group of people are the shadow IT in each of the department, right? So you need to be able to articulate, you must know what you're bringing to the table. Then I will go through some slides on, what's the organization going through, what most organizations going through in general, some of the overall high-level challenges, and from there, I hope you can pick up some ideas where your enterprise architecture capability can benefit the organization. And lastly, we'll look at how you identify the values, map those values together, right? And then using one of a BTABOK book of knowledge, a business technology architecture book of knowledge from ISA, as in particular the ITA-ROI format, to identify what you can actually bring to the table and to explain it and articulate it to what the management or the stakeholders want to hear, right? So with this in mind, the couple of things I want to bring up that Paul mentioned about, right? So, looks like we're going to have to print a lot of new cards, right? From enterprise architecture to architecture practice. And more importantly, the other thing that he mentioned was the EA, disbursement of EA to other teams. I think if you don't get it correct, what are the benefits you will bring from a business angle, you may, the EA team may be asked to do things like technology implementation, may be asked to even manage project, right? And that's what happened to my team and I previously, when each of the EA member, because we are more on the senior level, were asked to manage implementation of about 2 to 3 projects each, right? So that dilutes our focus into getting the architecture ready for the entire organization. Okay, so without further ado, I'll just move on to the first slide. Now, this is a bit more challenging already, right? Enterprise architecture, should I change it to architecture practice? Maybe in the next summit. But what exactly is the definition of architecture, right? And again, I think Paul mentioned there was over 100 of which, right? And even right now, if you look at you pick one definition, maybe business architect, right? And you look at the LinkedIn advertisement and the job descriptions on on what is required of the business architect, it's very confusing. It's totally inconsistent, right? And they sometimes totally get confused between business architect and business analyst, right? And you have situations whereby there's an advertisement or data architect, but need to be able to install and configure database, right? So there's a confusion between DBA and data architect. And of course, there's a lot more confusion at the enterprise architect layer. A lot of times it's confused with solution architect, right? So what is the scope? But of course, Paul just mentioned that the direction is again evolving and changing. Enterprise architect is a new practice, and there will be expected to be a lot of changes, right? But anyway, I have downloaded. I've shared three different definition of what an enterprise architecture is, right? Gartner looks specifically at the proactive responses to disruptive forces, right? At the end of it is to go towards the business vision and outcomes. Tech Target would look at it as a blueprint, looking at structure and operations, and TOGAF looks at it as how we can manage the organization or organize everything to achieve future objectives. So if you look at the three of them, they're similar in nature if you go down in detail, but they're also totally different, right? The similarity is all about achieving the business vision and business outcome, right? So this is the first key that you should look at when you are trying to present your value. Your value is anything that is aligned to supporting and creating that business vision or outcome, right? So we should not be looking at. I think there was a question in last panel, bringing new technology in. Going to the cloud because everybody is going to the cloud without really understanding what cloud technology may or may not bring, right? So one example I can look at cloud is that if the organization critical requirement for the next 2 years is to reduce operational expenses, and because of technology, easy to manage, easy to implement, quick reactive time, and you just say, okay, let's go to the cloud, which transfer all your CAPEX to OPEX, you are actually not aligning to the business vision, business challenges, business goals, right? So everything you must look from the business angle. Okay, so with that confusion in a nutshell, I just want to run through a slide that I've created based on Dr. Raj Ramesh about what enterprise architecture is, so that we are all aligned. I'm sure that in the audience, there are some junior architects, there's some senior architects, just bear with me. Right, so if you look at your organization, is an organization be preparing for digitalization or improvement, right? Whatever it may be, and we want to transform. Now, when we look at the organization, there are many things we have to deal with. We have to deal with competitors, we have to deal with new technology. How do you bring in new technology? And we have to deal with customers, right? And I think Brian mentioned customers is internal and external, and I totally agree. If you're internal IT, you should treat your internal users as customer, because we always treat customer at a higher level, right? But in this particular case, if let's say customers are actually, the people who's going to keep the lights running, the electricity going, the business running, we have to take them their feedback, their experience into real consideration. And that, I think that's why that Dr. Siti also mentioned that one of the things they're looking at is UI UX, right? If your UI UX is not good, then we are not actually attracting new customers as well. Okay, and then of course the governments, we are talking about regulations and all that. Within this box, right, we have what we call our organization and enterprise, in this case enterprise, right? Enterprise architecture, enterprise. So we have got people, process, we've got systems, we've got data, And we are actually trying to create products and services that adds value, deliver value to the customers, right? So what enterprise architecture is, it's just a framework, your TOGA framework, your association, your, and it applies to any type of organization, non-profit, government, right? And then enterprise to everybody is slightly different as well. To the CTO is different, to a CFO is different, to a CEO is different. Now, what we are looking at also, enterprise architecture is also evolving. So we have always been looking at things, this new approach called digital enterprise architecture, right? Whereby we are transforming ourselves to deliver more value to the organization as well. So what we are basically doing is, our key goal is to bridge between business and technology. Nothing more, nothing less, right? We are the bridge. And if you remember Aaron's diagram this morning, we are right in the middle, and we have to talk business to the business team, and we have to talk more technology to our other domain partners. So let's look at business architecture. For business architecture, we look at everything, right? We look at everything from process, policy, organization structure. So we are definitely not an IT function. We are an enterprise business function. And then we are supported by the work with the application architecture. The application architect team will look at applications, how they tie to each other, integrations, what are the technologies we'll be using, looking at things like more enhanced reuse, system consolidation, and all that to reduce costs and improve efficiency, right? And next, data. Data is a big thing right now, mainly because data explosion has been happening for the last 10, 15 years, right? And we're no longer looking at just data as in from database. We are now looking at everything that contains anything about the organization. We're looking at movies, we're looking at audios, we're looking at chat messages, emails, right? And all this needs to be managed in a secure way to comply with all the regulations that we have right now, particularly things like GDPR, the European Union ones. We're talking at PDPA as well. So looking at all this, right, there is this new found domain called data architecture that have to look at everything. Now, please do not get confused between data architecture and DBA. And lastly, the guys that actually keep the nuts and bolts running, these are the technology architecture team. Okay, so that's how, in a nutshell, that's what enterprise architecture is all about, right? We are the bridge between business and the technology team. Okay, the main goals of enterprise architecture, right? I've got a few examples here just to rejoggle our memory. So what we need to know is this is what we are bringing to the table, right? So in a high level, this is what we're bringing to the table. Later on, the next few slides, we look at the organization, what they want from us, and we want to map the two together. So some of the key things that we are always looking at is actually reduction of cost, right? Enterprise architecture is supposed to reduce costs by consolidation, by looking at what's effective, by reducing redundancy, right? We also increase efficiency because don't forget, one of the key functions of the business architect is to continuously look at processes and process improvement. Now, whether process improvement involves technology is not relevant, but some may improve and some may just improve changes in the level of authority and approving structure, right? And when we look into digital transformation, nothing is more important than to reduce the turnaround time. Without enterprise architecture, in the old days, during when I start working on, start doing development in C++ and in COBOL, right? So that is 30, 40 years ago. We have the luxury of 3 months to prepare our documentation, 3 months to develop, and 1 to 3 months to deploy. Nowadays, people are looking at new functions to be deployed every 2 weeks. Right? If you look at some of the companies like Airbnb, and Grab, they would have a new function deployed every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks. So reduced turnaround time is very important. This is, without enterprise architecture, you cannot do that, right? We do that by a variety of means, right? And the most important is actually aligning and delivering the business needs and objectives. So by being the bridge, we need to make sure we continuously align to the organization. So that's what we bring to the table, right? Besides some of the other terms, right? Now, So once we know what we bring to the table, we start looking at what the organization is looking for, right? So we have all this bag of tricks that we're bringing to the table saying that, okay, we do this, right? At the end of the day, what does the business think we can do? What is the business going to measure us on? So we have to identify that, and we have to articulate in a consistent way, in a formalized way, where we cover all angles and we cover all stakeholders, right? So now, looking at the organization, an organization basically is in a challenge position at the moment. When I believe our colleague from BOC has highlighted things like PESTEL, I would throw in PESTEL for SWOT. I also throw in things like Porter's 5 Forces. This is what the organization is under stress on. Imagine that you are the CEO of the organization, and from a business angle, you have to handle all these challenges. A lot of them can actually derail your entire business, right? So example, I look at political, right? It's not just about who won the election in 2018, right? You can go global as well. 2 examples I can highlight right now is, if you are an importer or you trade in grain and you trade in sunflower seed oil, your Ukraine situation makes a lot of difference to your business, right? You really have to find alternatives if you want to maintain your growth percentage, or you have to find different markets and all that, right? And of course, if you are a manufacturer that requires chips, or you're trading in chips, whose 90% of primary source is from Taiwan. So what's happening between Taiwan and China right now, you have to be very, very concerned about, right? Oh, right. And also, one of the things that I heard this morning that Aaron highlighted, that can impact any organization in a big way, whereby enterprise architect can contribute, right? In not so much controlling the impact, but being able to understand and being able to be in a bit more control of the organization, is that sustainable growth, right? Now, I had the pleasure of working in an organization whereby sustainable growth is a very, very important measurement for us at the organizational level. We look at things like a zero carbon footprint. That was our target in 4 or 5 years' time, right? So zero carbon footprint meaning that whatever carbon we create, we also counteract. We counteract that by planting trees and all that, right? So one of the things that enterprise architect can look at is to look at our carbon footprint, right? I did some study for my director, and one of the things we look at is even something as simple as number of pages printed on our printer across all organizations, right? How do we actually help reduce that? Because carbon footprint, besides profit, is now also an important measure, right? And of course, the other things are legal, regulatory, which your PDPR, and of course, in any organization right now, we are talking about digitalization. Technology is going to be a critical impact. Now, with all those in mind, right, those are all formal, you discuss, you look at it through PESTEL, but the organization has been hit with things like cloud over the last 10 years. Go cloud or don't go cloud? Why do we go cloud? And I think our colleague from Huawei mentioned, right, sometimes when you go cloud, I think Malik mentioned that, some people are actually reverting from cloud to on-premise, right? Whatever the reason is, but maybe the environment has changed. So maybe we need a mixture of each, right? And then of course, there's all this digital disruptor. If you were in the taxi company, you would have encountered this 10 years ago. If you were John Marriott, Marriott Hotel, you're JW Marriott, sorry, not John Marriott, JW Marriott, you would have encountered this years ago. Right. And then, of course, COVID has hit us 2 years ago, which lead to mobility. So people keep talking about mobility as an option in the past. Now people have to really plan mobility in the long term, right? And of course, because of mobility, because of work from home, you have security issues as well. So now the organization will start to look at first thing they should be looking at is, what is my digital state? What is my organization all about? Just because just because you have Microsoft Teams deployed to help you with collaboration and all that, does not mean you are actually in a digital transformation stage. So you need to understand that. I'll have a slide to explain a bit about that. And of course, lastly, the digital strategy. So all these are areas, right, the enterprise architect would have a big impact on, right? So you have to look at it from this angle, and then you look at the granular things of what your organization is looking at. Now, looking digital transformation, just quickly, I think Malik mentioned it. Malik mentioned is digitization, improvement, and transformation. So based on the text, general text that you have, you've got digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. What is the difference, right? So I'll just move this up first. Digitization has been happening since 1940s, and it's still happening right now, right? But it's happening with different technology. Digitization is just about capturing physical information into a computer form, digital form, and then organizing it, right? So in the old days, you have got all your bank tellers with the, they pass all the transaction slip to the back end, and they've got 4 or 5 terminals, and everybody start typing away. Now we're still doing it because many organizations are still doing things like scanning, taking the data from document and all that, right? So it's still happening. And then the next stage was, once we encountered all this information, how do I automate my process? How do I streamline my process? And to a certain extent, some online functions can be passed under here. How do I automate my process? By including my customer to do my work online with my system, right? So that's the next part. And lastly, we're talking about digital transformation. Basically, you have two main areas. One area is, how do I transform my business into a digital form altogether, right? The second part, which is the holy grail for most organizations, and only organizations like Uber and Airbnb will probably be in that, right, is to set up innovation and using digital to find new avenues for business, new revenue, what we call revenue stream, new way of making business, right? Making money. Okay. So and the next phase is we can talk about it. It's actually the behavior of the organization, right? So on the holy grail side is you have everything set up for innovation, adaptiveness. You can change within a day, what you need to do. But I think personally, most organizations are trying to get to this area right now and trying to in a way survive, right? So now, okay, so I will just look at when you go into what they call the reason why you need to know this is because when you are trying to articulate your benefits, right? You're trying to articulate your values. You don't want to misrepresent what you're going to do. Many organizations are thinking they are in digital transformation, but like Malik said, they're actually trying to digitize, right? So you need to be very clear on that. So you need to ask the question, where are you? Okay, so right, next. So these are some of the things that organizations are expecting from IT. What's very important that I want to highlight here is alignment with business goals and strategy, right? All the others are pretty much given, cost, value driven. The other important thing is agile and responses, right? Agile and responsive. Your IT needs to be more agile. They do things quickly and very fast, right? They can do more things within a shorter period of time. So these are the things that business is expecting from IT, and how is enterprise architecture going to deliver? Okay, so we need to focus on these kind of things and match it together. Next, I will just share with you, these are some of the challenges that business face from IT, right? Not scaling, the culture is not good enough, we don't have enough skill set, we are very silo, our metrics and KPI do not quantify business value. For example, to deliver a project within scope, within budget, on time. Does that mean a thing, right? We should be looking at delivering a project to achieve certain business value. So that's how we should look at things. These are challenges that business will face from IT, and we need to really look into those kind of things, right? And then, oh yeah, sorry, I'm trying to get rid of this. Maybe I put it up there. Okay. So because of all this issue, right, the failure rate, according to Forbes in 2016, of digitalization project is 84%.
Now, McKinsey and BCG had it higher, right? Can be 6, 7, all the way from 70 to 95%. And all this, if we have enterprise architecture or an architecture practice, we should be able to address and improve the ratio, right? Right, next. Okay, so how do we do better? Very simple. We do better by introducing enterprise architecture. First, we need to have a framework or a mixture of framework. None of these frameworks are all inclusive, or you can actually mix and match them. So the one in the middle, everyone will be, I think almost everyone out there will be quite aware of, is the TOGA framework, right? And of course, we will need to have the skill set to do this. So why I highlight this, because I'm going to explain the next steps in identifying values that mean anything to the business using the TOGA ADM framework, okay? ADM structure. Now, the enterprise architecture approach will definitely help you overcome all the challenges that we mentioned just now. But now you need to find out what are the values that the business is looking at, and then how do you articulate the values. Sorry, I have to speed up a bit. Got 8 minutes left. Okay, first thing we need to do is to identify the values, like say, using the ADM framework. In the ADM, we have got all the structure, and of course, we have got the business side, the IT side, the planning side. Let's go through one at a time, right? From the business side, we will actually be continuously looking and aligning with business goals and strategies. We will make sure that we are continuous, it's a closed loop and it's continuous. If the strategy change, the business change, right? If the strategy, the business goal change, the strategy will change. The IT strategy will also change. This is a closed loop thing. Not only that, we are actually looking at all end-to-end organization. So that's why I say we are not an IT function. We look at organization skills and capabilities, which a colleague from BOC mentioned a lot on the tools, right? Look at value streams, we look at capability and mapping. And on the information side, we're looking into all the aspects of IT, right? Reduce complexity, security, right? More important right now is actually data is everyone's responsibility. Data is everyone's right. Everyone in the organization should have right to access any data that they need to do their work. At the same time, it must be in a secure manner, right? In the government's case, they talk about utilization of data to serve the internal users, to serve the community. In a public organization's case, is always about monetization, right? I used to work for telco, and we monetize the data by being able to use the data to create campaigns, right? Offers to individual subscribers. So things like, and of course, Google's people at Google will share data with their partners based on regulation. That's why you got what they call, you got an advertisement popping up all the time. Now, the other next few steps that we look at how we can contribute value to the organization is how we prioritize projects, how we rank the projects based on financial outcomes, right? Those of you who have gone through some of the IASA courses, you will remember the net present value and all that, right? And we'll set KPIs, and we will also make sure things are reusable, right? And things don't clash with each other. So we don't have repetition and then redo and rework. And lastly, because of the governance and change management, the risk will be lower. So this is basically the way I would go around using the ADM framework to identify what are the details. Now go down to the next level, the next two levels. What are the details of the business challenges and business goals that we are trying to address? Okay. So for example, one of the business goals would be to reduce IT costs, right? So when we're doing planning, we make sure that we actually focus a lot more on reuse. We focus more on whether we move to the cloud. We move to the cloud if there's a capex constraint, and we try to retain servers if there is an OPEX constraint, things like that. So, but we need to be aligned with what the business wants to do and what the business challenges is. Okay. So now, how do we actually, now that you have brought to the table, these are the things I can do for you. And then next, you look at the organization in detail, you talk to the bosses, you are actually sitting together with the strategy team. What are the things we want to achieve? You break down to the activities, what you want to do. Then you look at what are the things you can contribute to, right? Now, after you do that, how do you articulate this? right? And this is a very simplistic approach, but it's very very interesting, and a lot of the students have gone through IASA find this to be very practical, right? So what ITA-ROI do is to split the presentation on the benefits you bring to the organization, the 5 different areas: financial, constituent improvement, reduce complex. Financial is basically about, what CEO cost reduction avoidance. Constituent improvement is look at our ecosystem, our customer and suppliers. How are we improving their lives, right? One example will be an online capability for customers to do basically all the functions without calling our people. And then reduce complexity. This is our core. As business architect, we will have to consistently look at processes, look at how to improve processes, look at how to extend processes to bring efficiency to the organization. And of course, systems, locations. I used to run an organization with eight countries. If I did not go to the cloud, then I will have to, I have to have data center in 8 countries at least, right? So, but when we went to the cloud, we only have 1 data center, 2 data center, Azure and AWS. Economic development. So how are we contributing to expansion of market, finding new market segments, totally new areas that we're looking into? How do we contribute for that, right? And of course, fostering the democracy, right? How do we actually enhance our people involved with us, right? Including our users, even our vendors. How are we including them in our decision making, in our planning? So we identify and we present to management in these 5 different categories. And where possible, as typical with current requirement, is how you monetize all that. Okay, so here are some examples of what you put under the ITA-ROI examples, like cost. Financial is very straightforward. CSI will be self-service by vendors, integration between our system, our vendor system. Reduce complexity, merging of systems, those are very clear-cut. Processes, before improvement, how many days do you need? After improvement, how many days do you need? Those are the things that you can present to management. This is the value I bring, right? Economic development, new markets, new products, right? Fostering democracy, getting customers involved. So this may not be that easy to monetize, but it will be something interesting for the COO or even the CFO to look at, because they will know that whatever you're doing is more global, right, and just not silo. Okay, so now that's pretty much how I am looking at presenting value. First, you need to identify what values you can bring to the organization. Next, you look at the things that the organization want to do, the challenges they're facing. You map them together, and you use ITA-ROI from BTABOK to present it in a concise manner, right? Before I close off, I just want to share with you this slide, which is very interesting. It's about your own EA maturity level, and you have to map that with where you are, digitalization, and then are we really performing digital transformation? I think one of the previous speaker was talking about talking about you need to be very close to the decision makers, right? And you also need to really know, is it doable? Is it bringing a new technology in, or bringing the right technology in? Okay. Lastly, this is just a summary point of what I mentioned. Okay, about how you go around it. It's a very simplistic but very practical manner of presenting, articulating, as the slide says, articulating the values you bring to the organization. Okay, with that, I end my presentation. I'm 41 seconds over time. Sorry about that. Alicia?